Yo, what's going on, guys? And today we'll be discussing Brook Lopez is a player to keep an eye on for the Golden State Warriors. Before we start today's video, I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. Should they go after him? If so, let me know why. I definitely think it's an interesting pickup if they were to go after him, as a player like Brook Lopez is obviously not going to tilt the scales, but it'll allow you to go back to the center by committee approach, as his rim protection and spacing mixed with bringing back Kevon Looney, Quentin Post, Trace Jackson Davis gives you multiple centers with different skill sets to help you out, as Butler can still play 36 minutes a night. The window still for championship contention seems like it's cracked as long as Curry is Curry and the team is healthy. The Warriors have a punter's chance. Now, they are thin the further you go down. I assume also Gary Payton II comes back. They're not as expensive as they used to be, but they are aging. If they can nail adding someone like Brook Lopez and mixing him in, and maybe turn Jonathan Kaminga into a sign and trade for Mr. Brook Lopez, then that could really help them have a team that is ready for a path to one last deep run. If not, I think this summer could end up being regretful, but I think they've done a really good job. I do like the idea of Brook Lopez being a guy that they're monitoring. He fits the bill as a floor stretching, rim protecting 5, and I don't think he'll be that pricey. Look, Lopez is in decline. He isn't the guy he used to be, and I'm not saying it's like bad. He still shot 51% from the field, 37% from 3, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, almost 2 blocks a game, 13 points. Like, look, that's fine. In the playoffs at 37 years old, it'll become more apparent what I mean, that he's a bit more liable than he used to be, especially in switch. If we look at the other free agents, before we dive into more Brook Lopez ideas, I do believe if they were to sign him, I'd hate to break it to you guys, I don't think they would go out and break the bank. They can use their non-taxpayer mid-level exception of $14.1 million, as they are 17th under the tax, $25 million under the first apron. So they have some wiggle room, but it's tight. And they have the biennial exception, which I think they would want to sign him to, which is the $5.1 million. And that's just my opinion. They'd either want to sign him to the $5.1 million or sign and trade Jonathan Kaminga for him, in my opinion. I don't know why I had to tell you it was my opinion multiple times if you're watching the video. However, I digress. Now, here at Hoops Hype, we have a free agent ranking page that we did, and the only others I could think that they could go after, I mean, Clint Capella could be cheap. A Precious Achua or a Luke Cornett could be options. Mason Plumlee. But I do like that Brook is probably the one who fits and addresses everything the most. So let me hear your thoughts on that one. Kaminga is allegedly going to be a guy that could be signed and traded. And I wonder if he's a guy, the only really team that could go on and get him is the Brooklyn Nets, maybe Detroit. But if you're the Brooklyn Nets, what are you asking for? As this is a team that's going to be at 171 million projected salary. They're below the thresholds, and they'll have all the exceptions available to them. To me, the biggest thing when you look at trying to flick Kaminga, and I think that is going to have to be a team like the Nets, as they're the only ones with salary. And we'll talk Pistons in a second, but I find it hard to believe you would go out and get yourselves into a situation where, I don't know, I think paying Kaminga whatever he thinks is worth is not enough. And it's just, let's sign and trade him, justifying at least something that we can work with. And you can only take half the salary back. So that's where I think, looking at the Nets roster, you would love to get Cam Johnson on this team. And the way to do that, if we go back, would have to be some sort of combination, sign and trade, which would be a non-simultaneous transaction, and then a second transaction to make the deal work. I think you would want to throw in probably either a combination of Santos or Post, or my apology, not Post, Santos or Waters, and with, of course, Kaminga, and that would probably get you to a little bit over half of Johnson's contract. But I don't know if they have the capital to get that then in terms of draft assets. So if you go over to Detroit, you're trying to find a team trying to dump a player, and that's how you would get Mr. Kaminga off your team. And you could always say that maybe they sign and trade Jonathan Kaminga to the Bucks for Brook Lopez. That's a possibility too. It gets a little trickier there. And however, that is something that they could do, and not to keep out of your mind. Now, the only other one that I think, if they really wanted to get interesting, could be a Jonathan Kaminga trade for like a Simone Fontecchio. I think that, again, would just be a bit, if they're just trying to find some shooting and some more size. To me, I think if they can continue to look at this, where, look, they're going to bring back Looney. They're probably going to bring back Gary Payton. I believe both on veteran minimums. They like it. And they can use their full mid-level exception if they want to stay under their first apron. And that's after drafting someone with the 41st pick, which I think Maxime Renaud, if he's there, there's a few bigs that if they're back end of the draft available, I would go after. But to me, I think you look at this team, Brook Lopez, Quinn Post, Kevon Looney, I think you solve that. In the draft, you then go shooting. A Chaz Lanier could really fit well for them. As I said, their core's locked in. They need some center help, which I think by committee could work, and some bench depth. They have a manageable payroll, but I do believe if they miss on the center, run it back, or they can't trade Kaminga for some rotational value, they're going to be calling it second round at best. But with Curry, Butler, and Draymond all still productive, I think they have at least one punch left in them to go out and do it. They have very few picks, and they do have the Anderson and Waters trade exceptions, but they really can't do anything too risky to mess up what they have right here. And New Orleans could be another team that's selling. You gotta find a contract. If Kaminga wants 20, let's say somebody gives him 3 years, 20, I still think it's disgusting. Maybe it's the full mid-level exception. So we're just gonna look at $7 to $10 million, just to give you guys an idea of what they could do before we wrap up this video. And I don't think John Conchar's money goes on too far. Okay, Ayo DeSumo could be a depth piece that they could go after if they wanted to sign and trade Kaminga, full mid-level exception. I think that one's a good one. You could do a Sean Tate. Nah, because you can sign and trade him. Jeff Green and, Jay Sean Tate. I don't know if they can be sign trades for sign trades. I wonder. I just don't like the idea of those guys, or even Gary Harris. Now, and I don't like Atlanta going after him for George Niang. I think that's just too beneficial for the Warriors. So you'd have to think, man, it definitely becomes difficult, because the higher the salary goes, the less likely I think the team that would have the salary be interested in doing that. Like, maybe if you really wanted to take a risk on Matisse Thybulle, you do a sign and trade for Matisse Thybulle, and the Trailblazers take a chance on him. But I think Io DeSumo was the one that I liked the most. And then it becomes, the contracts all, because you're looking at guys between 7 to 12 million or 7 to 10 million, depending on how much Kaminga is going to make, which I think is going to be between 14 and 20 on the high side. I really think it's just going to be the mid-level exception. So, yeah, no, hear your thoughts on that one. Like, comment.
Yeah, basically, I just want to end the video right here.